Now hold on, before you get upset about a video talking about the best decks in the meta for a game that has been out for 12 minutes, let me start by saying I get asked this question all the time, and I agree with you actually. I don't think we can really fully say what is the absolute best thing in this meta. The game is very fresh, very new. Play what excites you. We're gonna find out a lot as we go, but I am gonna talk to you in this video about decks that you see all the time, why I think they're good, why I think they're very popular, and I do think watching this video you'll get an idea of what decks you might like to build or why you keep running into this particular deck. So here are the top decks in the Pokemon TCG Pocket meta that is very newly formed and maybe not a meta. Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw, let's do it. I'm not really gonna do this in order of what I think is the absolute best because it's really hard to say. I mean, you're ranking into just people trying lots of things out, but I am gonna talk about quite a few decks in this video. So if you find your deck in here, there it is. And if you don't, let me know in the comments what you think I missed. What's like a glaring deck that should be on this list that I just haven't played enough of or seen enough of. I'm not going to necessarily talk about the exact 20 card deck you're going to see because there will be some variation in supports and things like that and possibly some other ways you want to run it, but I'll give you a general idea of what these decks look like. The first deck is going to be Mewtwo EX and Gardevoir. I don't know if this is the best deck, but man, it is so prevalent. You see it all the time. It plays really well. The combination of Mewtwo and Gardy is obviously very intentional, right? Gardevoir is a two-stage Pokemon that is on your bench. You use that to power up Mewtwo. So you put Mewtwo in the active spot. You can power up Mewtwo pretty fast, right? Mewtwo EX only needs 2 energy to start doing a 50 damage attack. And then it needs 4 energy to do this massive damage, but it's going to discard 2 energy every time. No big deal because Gardevoir will give you an additional psychic energy every single turn to put onto your active Pokemon there. So Mewtwo sits in the active spot, Gardevoir sits on the bench, Gardevoir powers up Mewtwo, Mewtwo sweeps the enemy team. Pretty basic stuff here. A lot of people run things like Potion. Of course, every deck has kind of Professor's Research a couple times. A lot of deck have Pokeball a couple times. Sabrina, I've seen very popular with this deck. Giovanni is a good supporter for this deck. You can honestly run this without any other Pokemon lines at all. You could just fill your deck out with supporters if you want, and I've had pretty good success with that. You also can use a couple of good early game Pokemon like Meowth or Farfetch'd or something like that for this deck. You could put other things in. I've seen people play with Mr. Mime or Jinx, but the general idea of this deck is get Mewtwo out in the active spot, power up Gardevoir on the bench, take down the enemy team. It's pretty much that simple, and it's that good. Deck number 2 is one of my favorites, and that's going to be Dragonite with a Koga Weezing wall. So you set up Weezing, and to make this deck, I have a video on it on my channel. To make this deck, you have to remove dark energy from your deck because Dragonite is a multicolored card, right? Dragonite takes water and electric energy, lightning energy. So you have to power it up with multiple things of energy, and you want to do everything you can to get this card powered up as quickly as possible. A great way to do that is to have Coughing, then evolved into Weezing. It can sit in the active spot, poison your opponents for 0 energy, and then retreat essentially for free to your hand using Koga, bringing Dragonite into play. Then you use Dragonite to sweep the enemy team, just rain down Draco meteors on them and do insane damage. A really fun setup. There are other ways to set up Dragonite, but this is a great way to do it. The cards you're going to see often for this deck, again, 2 Professors, 2 Pokeball, very, very common for anything like this. You just need to thin your deck out and also make sure that you get all of your cards so that you can make your plays happen, right? A few support cards that I've seen run with this that I think work pretty well is X-Speed. I think X-Speed is pretty solid here, so you could pull out Coughing or something like that, or Dratini back to your bench, right? Because you could run into situations where you get the wrong Pokemon in your active spot. But like with a lot of these decks, you can fill this out with other supporters and things that you need. But the base of this is that wall and then Dragonite. Now I want to talk about one of my absolute favorite cards in Pokemon TCG Pocket, and that is Starmie EX. I think Starmie EX is incredibly powerful. It's 2 costs to do an insane amount of damage. It's just 1 stage to evolve. It retreats for free. I love this card. I've seen it work really well with an Articuno EX deck, but I've built this with a few different water decks, and it's worked pretty great with a lot of them. I've built this up with a Gyarados, where I kind of use Starmie to annoy my opponents, then hopefully power up my Gyarados on the bench. I've paired this with Frostmoth. I've paired this with just about anything water I feel like could use Starmie and Starmie EX in the deck. But I think the strongest is going to be Starmie EX and Articuno EX. So you've got that really powerful wall. Articuno, you got the 140 HP, the blizzard damage, and you can also start with Starmie and just do crazy damage, free switch into Articuno once it's powered up, and really sweep your opponents. This deck, unlike some of the ones we talked about earlier, is going to run Misty, which, yeah, is a really crazy card. You can have great games with it and bad games with it, but even if your Misty doesn't do too much, this is still an amazing deck, which is what makes it so powerful. If Misty hits early, you kind of win the game with a lot of water decks, which is a card they're probably going to need to tweak, right? Or something about it. And even if you don't hit early, you still do insane damage with this deck. Other good supporter cards for this are things like Potion, Giovanni. You could fill your whole deck out with tons of supporters and just run Staryu, Starmie, and the Articuno EXs, and you'll have a great time. Super strong deck. The next deck I wanted to talk about features Pikachu EX, and of course it also features Zapdos EX. This feels like a combination you see a lot of, right? You've got like Charizard, Moltres, Mewtwo doesn't have this with Articuno, but you've got other Pokemon that do. And now we have Pika EX and we have Zapdos EX. So the idea behind this, of course, Pika EX, really powerful card. If you're able to have a full bench, you do a lot of damage for very, very low energy with it. You also run things like regular Pikachus, regular Raichus, and Lieutenant Surge. So you've got a few things you can do. You can have your Pikachu EX dealing a ton of damage. You could have Zapdos dealing damage with pretty good HP at the same time. It's kind of that tanky wall that you can play as a basic Pokemon. And you also have the option to switch in Raichu for a big time nuke, you know, with Lieutenant Surge. Lieutenant Surge just gives extra energy to Raichu. You'll be able to power it up and do crazy damage to your opponent. So that's a really fun option for this deck. The other option for a Pikachu EX deck is to play Pikachu, a single Zapdos EX, and then run something like Blitzel, Zebstrika, Voltorb, Electrode. I want to shout out Bella VGC for giving me kind of the setup right here. So you've got 2 Electrode, 2 Voltorb, 2 Blitzel, 2 Zebstrika. Only 1 Zapdos there, and then again, you can use Zapdos as that very, very powerful wall. You can also have Pikachu deal insane damage, and then you've got nice things that can easily retreat and deal damage and fill out your bench like Zebstrika and Voltorb. Of course, I feel like no list would be complete without talking about Charizard. I don't know if Charizard's the best card, but it ramps up in a really fun way. This is Charizard EX with Moltres EX. The idea behind this, of course, is you get Char on the bench, you get Moltres in the active spot, you use that Inferno Dance to start powering up Char. A couple turns later, Charmeleon, Charizard, switch it in and start sweeping your opponents with Char. That's the basic idea of a Charizard EX deck, and I feel like it's hard to play without Moltres, but if you have Moltres EX, it's really, really strong. One nice thing about this deck is you don't have to run other fire Pokemon with it. This is a deck where you could easily see running all other supports. You also could play some basic things that you want to put on your bench. I've tried it with Heatmore and things like that, where it's like, all right, it takes 1 energy to power up. But in general, what you're looking for here, Moltres turn 1, and then you put that in your active spot, power up Char, and start taking out the enemy team. There are other ways you can play this. People will play Moltres Centiskorch or Moltres Arcanine and things like that, but I just think this combination is probably the most powerful fire combination in the game right now. As for fighting decks, I haven't really liked a Brock line that much. I like Machamp and I like Marowak a little bit more. Machamp EX, I was playing around with a lot when the game came out. It was just like one of the first lines I got, so I was kind of making a few Machamp decks. And it feels like going Machamp EX line and Marowak EX line is pretty dang powerful. Outside of that, you fill it up with supporters. You get them out there and start doing crazy damage fast. Machamp, very consistent damage, right? Marowak, a couple big coin flips, so you don't know what's going to happen there, but a powerful combination for sure. The next meta deck that I see a lot that I haven't spent a ton of time with is Venusaur EX and Exeggutor EX. So you'd have the full Venusaur line, you have the full Exeggutor line, and then you would have a ton of supporters. You'd have Erica, Potion, Professor's Research, Sabrina. You just start filling out your deck with the rest of it being supporters. Early on, Exeggutor there in that active spot, and then you power up Venusaur on the bench. Hopefully, once Exeggutor goes down, Venusaur is ready to go. Simple. I don't love Venusaur. I don't feel like I've had as much success with it. I know some people have tried playing like a Lilligant to power up Venusaur. I think that's definitely an option, but I do feel like this is just so strong because Exeggutor can be kind of busted early in that slot. So there you have it, some of the most meta decks right now in Pokemon TCG Pocket. Things will change. There are decks that we haven't played enough. I have not played enough Alakazam. I have not tried enough of some of the dark Pokemon. I've definitely not played enough with Steel type. I know a lot of people are running Pidgeot in a lot of decks. Again, let me know what you think is super meta and exciting in the comments. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And as always, play what you like. You can win with lots of different decks. These are just decks that seem to be doing really, really well. Love you. See y'all next time. We did it.